Gun control. Capitola City leaders looking at tough new restrictions.
They are going to hurt our national defense. They're going to hurt our economy. And they're going to hurt a lot of innocent men, women, and children.
Former Defense Secretary Leon Panetta pulling no punches, talking on the sequester, an exclusive interview.
And our top story, the latest on the shooting that left 2 Santa Cruz officers dead, how the community is coping with the loss.
You're watching KSBW Channel 8, Salinas, Monterey, Santa Cruz. This is Action News 8. Coverage you can count on.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Erin Clark.
I'm Dan Green. We will get to that looming sequester fight that is set to hit at midnight tomorrow in just a moment. But first, the latest from the Santa Cruz shootings that left 2 detectives dead. The sheriff revealed today that Butch Baker and Elizabeth Butler were ambushed by Jeremy Goulet.
Officers were trying to talk to him through a closed door when apparently he came around behind them and shot them with his own .45 caliber weapon. After killing the detectives, Goulet then took off with both officers' weapons. He also used Baker's body armor, which he found in the police car that he had stolen. At a news conference today, the Santa Cruz County Sheriff said the detectives never had a chance.
Body armor would not have helped in this case. And the answer to the first part of your question is no. The officers did not have even the opportunity to call on the radio. They barely had the opportunity to turn and run.
Goulet got into another shootout with other officers after he was trapped on Doyle just around the corner. He was shot and killed there. Sheriff Wowak also said Goulet had a passport and an airplane ticket to New Mexico, where his mother lives.
Today, the police chief said that his officers are set to go back to work tomorrow morning.
But the grieving will continue. The memorial for Baker and Butler outside the police department continues to grow as people are coming to mourn, grieve, and show support for police.
We're 2 days into this, and it's not any easier. Nothing's gotten easier for any of us. There have been a lot of tears shed behind these walls. A lot of tears shed in this community.
There's been just such an outpouring from the community at large, and then around the nation. I'd even say around the world. We're getting emails from all over.
Well, before those Santa Cruz police hit the streets tomorrow, there will be a briefing. It will be the first since the shooting occurred.
Santa Cruz police announced plans for the memorial service this afternoon. So here is what we know so far. The memorial service will be held at the Kaiser Permanente Auditorium at 11 o'clock Thursday morning, March 7th. That's 1 week from today. Overflow crowds will be put in the Civic Auditorium and possibly in a third yet to be determined location. Our coverage of the shootings continues online. There you can check out our live blog with all of the latest information on the fallen officers, the suspect, and the investigation. It's all there at KSBW.com. News out of Washington, just over 24 hours, a big across-the-board budget cuts will take effect. Lately, we have heard a lot about what could happen if they indeed go through, from flight delays to furloughs for federal workers.
But could these actually happen, or how many of them could really happen? Action News reporter Nicole Killian has more on what we can expect tomorrow from Capitol Hill.
This is going to be a big hit on the economy.
I don't think we can maintain the same level of security.
Kids are going to get hurt. That's just the reality.
The warnings of doom and gloom.
People are going to be unsafe. Homes are going to burn.
Real harm or just hype?
90-minute lines in airport, that we're not going to have meat inspectors, all these things that they are trying to put out there to scare the American people.
To sort through some of the sequester scares, we sat down with PolitiFact's Bill Adair.
Budget cuts are nothing new in Washington, and one thing that they will always do is make them sound as bad as they could. It's known as the Washington Monument Strategy.
Take this claim, for instance.
Federal prosecutors will have to close cases and let criminals go.
Mostly false on the Truth-O-Meter.
They say criminals will be let go, which conjures images of them swinging open the doors at federal prisons and people walking out. Well, what's going to happen is there will be fewer prosecutions.
What about this one?
Tens of thousands of parents will have to scramble to find child care for their kids.
That's half true.
The idea that parents would be scrambling, that depends on how the states spread the pain from these cuts.
And what about those travel troubles? PolitiFact says mostly true when it comes to claims about slowdowns or delays in air travel. In fact, just this week, the head of the TSA told lawmakers the biggest impact could be felt during the summer season. On Capitol Hill, Nicole Killian, KSBW Action News 8.
Well, the California Health Department says they could stand to lose tens of millions of dollars if the cuts kick in, including $1 million in vaccination funding, $2.5 million in upgrading the state's response to infectious diseases and natural disasters, fewer food inspections, substance abuse programs, and 50,000 fewer HIV tests.
It's critical that CHAZ is able to provide far-reaching services for people who are living with HIV, but just as importantly is to test people at high risk of HIV to ensure that they can access primary medical treatment as quickly as possible.
Nationally, if the sequester does happen, it's estimated that some 350,000 mentally ill and emotionally disturbed children may go untreated. And then there is the Defense Department taking a $500 billion hit from these sequester cuts.
Today, I got a chance to sit down with former Defense Secretary Leon Panetta to talk about those cuts and also get his views on the gridlock in Washington. Here is part of our exclusive interview.
My job as Secretary of Defense was I've got to be able to keep the American people safe. With what's happening, if these cuts go into place, it'll be very difficult to try to keep the American people safe. That's the seriousness of what is about to happen.
Leon Panetta returns to the Central Coast after 4 tough years in Washington, first as CIA director and then most recently Defense Secretary, guiding the Pentagon through a first round of $500 billion in cuts. He says another $500 billion through sequestration would literally threaten national security.
When you just simply say you're going to slash this across the board, and we're going to slash everything, regardless of whether it works or it doesn't work. We're going to slash everything. That kind of meat axe approach is irresponsible, and it does tremendous damage to the country, not just on defense programs, but on domestic programs as well.
Panetta pulls no punches talking about the dysfunction in Washington. Irresponsible, shameful, just a couple of the words he uses. He says elected representatives could learn a thing or two from our men and women in uniform. Americans who put themselves in harm's way fighting for our freedom, kept away from families and loved ones for many months at a time.
I think a little bit of that courage and dedication that we see in the men and women in uniform, I think if our Congress and the representatives back there in Washington would take that as an example, I think we'd be a hell of a lot better off.
My interview with Secretary Panetta covered a wide range of topics, everything from the sequester to the hunt for bin Laden to allowing women in combat to what's next for Panetta personally. The answer to that might surprise you. Next week, in a series of special reports, we will cover it all, beginning Monday night at 6 o'clock.
In Capitola, a decision on more gun control. City council members took up the issue at their meeting tonight. The already scheduled discussion comes as the community is still reeling from the shock of Tuesday's tragedy just down the road. Action News reporter Brittany Nielsen is live tonight with details.
Well, Dan, the Capitola City Council did pass its urgency ordinance tonight, only after, though, it took out some controversial elements. Several gun advocates were there to voice their opposition to Capitola's ordinance, and so did some council members. The council removed parts of the ordinance, including limiting the number of retail dealers that can operate in the city and regulating the distance between gun shops. Much of the ordinance is already covered by state law, things like requiring firearms to be locked and secured and banning possessions of guns near schools and city property. Now, the council did keep zoning requirements and the hope that the ordinance would help regulate where guns can be sold. Several citizens stood their ground tonight, telling the council that they didn't believe in these increased regulations.
To spend extra money to do that, to spend extra time from the city council and the police for something that's not going to accomplish anything more than is already being done in the state and federally, and is very likely going to subject you guys to lawsuits. I oppose this 100%.
When I first read this, I thought this is about the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen trying to get passed.
I think that we need to have our lawmakers continue to work on this. We can certainly give them input. But at this time, I think the ordinance goes above where we want it to go.
Of firearms dealers.
Now, this urgency ordinance required a 4/5 vote, and that's what it got tonight. The mayor voting no, saying she does not want more gun retailers in Capitola. Now, Police Chief Rudy Escalante tonight talked about the great job that the two already existing gun retailers are doing, saying that they are going above and beyond many times the state law that is already in existence. Dan, Aaron.
All right, thank you very much, Brittany. The council says this is the beginning of the discussion. They'll continue that discussion next month. They have asked the police chief to bring in more information about assault weapon sales, and they're also planning on a gun buyback. On the Crime Watch, a murder in Watsonville just before 3 o'clock this afternoon. Police say a man in his 20s was chased for nearly 3 blocks and then stabbed multiple times by a group of 5 men. The victim died at the scene.
Usually these would be a crime of opportunity, so if someone was seen in a certain area by a certain group, it may spark an altercation regardless of the time of day or the area of the city.
Witnesses say the attackers were dressed in dark clothing. 4 were Hispanic and had lighter skin. No arrests have been made. Police say it's likely gang-related. In Salinas, police responded to a residential burglary on Columbia Drive this afternoon. When they got there, one woman was arrested. She was sitting in a stolen car near the building. When they tried to arrest 2 other suspects, they fled at Maple and Grove, hopped a fence over to a home on Alameda, ran down the street, trying to hide in the backyard. Police were able to track them down. Both were arrested. Police said the 2 are known gang members.
Update now. The UCSC student who fell to his death yesterday from a footbridge near the Science Building fell down a 75-foot ravine. He has been identified. He's 19-year-old Tyler Collins. Police do not think foul play was involved.
A body found by Salinas police in a burning car has been identified as 27-year-old Dominique Goucher of Salinas. Police found the person dead, the victim dead, in the driver's seat of a car. It happened on Parkside last week. Monterey County's coroner used dental fragments for the identification. They ruled out foul play and ruled it a suicide.
Continuing coverage tonight on a historic day in the Vatican, the first resignation of a pope in 6 centuries. Roman Catholics are now without a pope, and the question is who may be next and how long the process of picking a new pope might take.
We have the Word of God, and we have one another. We have prayer, and that's it, and that's not bad.
As the Pope spoke so movingly about the church again in his last statement to us this morning, it's always at the center of his life.
The Cardinals will begin informal meetings to choose the next pope on Monday.
Coming up, the Pacific Grove mom on ABC's Shark Tank. Look at her creation and a sneak peek of her big primetime appearance.
Also, a wildfire forcing evacuations in Riverside County. How contained is it right now? Why firefighters say it could get a whole lot worse. First, though, here's Jim with your wake-up weather.
No fires around here. Pretty much a clear night sky with a few exceptions. Skycam 8 Monterey. We're looking down here at the shopping center somewhere in the fog. Pilots call this low IFR. You can look up and see the moon, but this stuff is right down on the deck. Visibility is reduced. You can see here on our fog trackers just barely working its way into the mouth of the Salinas Valley. North end of the bay is clear. Watch out for this stuff for early morning hours. It'll clear off pretty quick, but nonetheless, it's kind of soupy out there. 48 Watsonville, 53 in San Jose, 46 in Monterey. Light winds and a calm night. So local dense fog. Other than that, it's fair. Sunshine will get you going. And some updates on your weekend and our next shot at rain coming up in just a bit. Monterey.